Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Joining me is Mr. Trump Mania himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, what's going on today, sir?
Well, it's Donald Trump's universe, and we're just living in it. So here we go again. We're in the president-elect phase. So come what may, I guess. A lot of people celebrating. A fair amount of people around me nervous here in the New York City area. So we'll see how it goes. But pick up your copy of Trump Mania on Amazon now, audio edition, which is not me. But Amazon has like ACX where they do like audio, which is mostly good. Like sometimes they just don't know how to pronounce things because, you sort of have to know the person. So like Gene Ackerland, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But if you can get past that, I think it's enjoyable read. I bought one each for the audio, so just so I could hear it through once at least.
Not to get too political, but man, they were saying a Republican would never win the popular vote again, and he did. I was shocked by that too. So man, congrats and kudos to Trump. Not only did he win, he won the popular election too.
So my theory, and there's so many different things that will come out, would be that there's a lot of single issue voters. Whatever your issue may be,
yeah,
it's something that you're especially passionate about, and Trump was good at sort of like, finding those people, but also the dude vote, which of course, John, we talked about extensively in the Trump Mania miniseries, but he certainly went for the dude vote with Joe Rogan, Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, all the people we like. For me, as we're about to talk about Barry Horowitz in a moment, Barry Horowitz had certain trunks, certain symbol on it. So I was a single issue voter this time.
Nice. As far as Horowitz is concerned, I love that he's going to be the first thing we talk about because he's a #1 bestseller right now with his book, correct? Or am I crazy?
Yeah. So, with Amazon, it's always like a moment in time. So I was like, let me see how the book is doing. So it was #1. So I like grabbed that, cut that screenshot, and here we are. Tyrus seems to be dominating the top of the Amazon wrestling charts for years and years and years, which is like a story no one wants to tell, but it's an amazing story. However, Barry Horowitz, wrestling is my gimmick. So first of all, this is the lens of like Jewish kid growing up, loving pro wrestling, not necessarily realizing like Dean Malenko was Jewish. I heard the name Glenn Jacobs. I'm like, is he Jewish? He's not. Randy Savage is, depending on how you define Judaism. We usually do by the mother, but that wasn't. I love Randy Savage, but not because he was Jewish. And Goldberg was not yet around. So late 80s and beyond. So I always looked up to Barry Horowitz. So big fan. So I was so excited when this book came out. Now, the book I'm going to compare it to, it doesn't hold up so well in modern times, but to me, it was a book that I loved, and that reminds me the most of it. John, did you ever read Arn Anderson's first book? Not the graphic novel, but the one.
The small one.
The small, thin one, right? Arn Anderson Forever. This is what reminds me of it. It's very like, it's not, this book isn't kayfabe, but it's kind of light, like where he's kind of, for the most part, going through his life in the wrestling world, and like he has like a little bit of comments on it. It feels sort of like he's like doing a long form interview. Of course, he had a co-author with the book, but like it feels like he's a long form interview, and he's like fairly opinionated. But like for the most part, it's smooth and it's interesting. And I even learned some things like about Barry's time in Florida. I have to go back and watch some of those videos. Unfortunately, I learned some difficulties in his life. He had actually lost a child at some point. So that's very tragic. Anyone that has to experience that, obviously. So the book's expensive. It's $29.95 for a soft cover, and it's about 220 pages. But for me, Barry Horowitz fan, 2 pats on the back. Recommended.
Yes. To me, such an underrated worker. Man, he was great. Go back and watch his matches with Owen, especially. Man, it's like what a clinic. Awesome wrestler.
100% agree. And my favorite series with Owen is when Owen is the Blue Blazer, when the first time he comes
Yes.
into
Yep.
WWF, those house shows.
Yes.
I think
You ever see the
especially
Z
one,
Channel one from LA? That one's awesome. It's
exactly,
like 20 minutes. Yes.
100%. They just had like a great chemistry right away. And that is like quintessential Barry Horowitz. Love Owen Hart, of course. Definitely recommend that.
Now, going back into politics a little bit here, what are we doing on this show? We're doing wrestling and politics. What is the latest in the world of politics?
Yeah, John, I'm getting a little feisty on X, and I think I lost 5 followers, but I'll recover.
Oh,
So um, first, I said, are the political beliefs of promoters of independent wrestling promotions you follow important to you? I'll explain this more in a minute, but
right, right.
so a small response rate, but 22% said yes, 50% said no, and 27% said maybe. This is an interesting issue because this promotion called Blitzkrieg Pro Wrestling out of Connecticut canceled Jake Hager. He was the first victim of post-election wrestling cancel culture, and I was joking that he is also the next NWA world champion. Um, so Blitzkrieg Pro wrote that Jake Hager will no longer be appearing on December 14th. On top of sponsors no longer being willing to work with him, we also just have to do what we think is right for our roster and fans. We're going to get to work on a replacement ASAP. What was it? Hager said that Tony Khan is like a communist, which is kind of funny because his father is like one of the wealthiest people in the world.
Yes.
But I don't know, like he didn't hurt any, like he might have offended some people, but he didn't hurt anyone, whatever. But the irony here, and maybe I'm going to Feeney territory, John. You'll have to keep him up to date here. The irony here is that this promotion is called Blitzkrieg Pro. Now, the term Blitzkrieg is most associated with Nazi Germany's
Yes.
lightning, right? It means lightning war in Germany, and it was a strategy to avoid a long war in the first phase of World War II, just like basically like bomb the crap out of certain cities. And I know, obviously, like we all remember Blitzkrieg from WCW. He was just there.
Yes.
Was it weeks or
Awesome.
months? And then he retired to
Months. Yeah, he's
become
awesome.
months to become like a computer technician, which good for him. Everyone do whatever they want. So like, yes, in wrestling we think of Blitzkrieg from that first, but like, WCW wasn't that careful with names, right? What was they had like the final solution was like somebody till they realized later. So a lot of that sort of thing, and
And
let
then
them
he
deal
became
with
the ultimate solution.
the
Yes.
ultimate
Yep.
solution. So I know that there
Yep.
was years between, and Blitzkrieg came in with his own name, but with the first, I don't know if it was a mistake or what from WCW. I'm still like a little bit like whatever when I hear like Elimination Chamber, like it feels like weird to me. But for a promotion that's so sensitive to give themselves the name, I think they like should be a little bit more careful.
My only thing was, I know if the sponsors don't want to work with them, then obviously you pull them because you don't want to lose the sponsors, and then you find a replacement. I know how that works, but it's like you don't want to alienate, especially if you're a smaller wrestling promotion. You don't want to alienate any fans. So you know what I mean. You don't want to just if you believe this, so we don't want you in our show. It's like a slippery slope for sure. But if the sponsors obviously don't want him in, you can't because then you lose the sponsor.
Yeah, there's like so many people that are like watching pro wrestling that are ready to like cancel so many people. Like
Yeah,
people are in
weird.
the independents because like not necessarily that there's something missing, but like people are passing through for all different reasons. Some of them are because of their spotty backgrounds, right? Like, so if you're not
Right.
willing to work with some of the talent, like, and obviously you have a certain choice. If I was promoting, some I would work with, some I would not. But like to constantly like hammer these people and like go after them, whereas you give other people a pass, like it just it doesn't seem right to me. And finally, with politics and pro wrestling, and then we'll move on. Just a reminder, and I think that there had been indications that like sort of like he had changed his mind at a certain point, but Shahid Khan, Shad Khan, was among the NFL owners that gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration. Like, I mean, obviously his first one when he was
Yep.
Inaugurated, but AEW had like an election day special. It's interesting because they had, I think, what was it, like 40% off some shows for election day, and then they had like
Yes.
another promotion running with New Japan, 30% off for like the shows, including Providence, which only drew like 2,500, which we'll talk about I think later. So that's the
Your
politics.
favorite area. Yep. Your favorite
Um,
area. Yep.
yes, for sure. But if you are not turned off by such talk and you have a demand for Trump Mania's return, let us know.
Yes, yes. So as far as Pro Wrestling Insider, this is very interesting. I know we'll talk about PWI as well, different PWI than Pro Wrestling Insider. But talk to me just about what's going on with the wrestling media, and I guess maybe start with PWI and then go to Pro Wrestling Insider.
Yeah. John, it's funny, like till you said it, I didn't even realize it was like the same acronym.
You're right, right.
So like I know I'm the only person in the world, but the thing that I enjoy most about Pro Wrestling Illustrated that I subscribe to off and on, usually when my subscription lapses, a few months later they send me like a great deal. So I actually signed up for 2 years. Is every magazine and publication, and it used to be comic books too when they were mailed. Anything that goes through the mail is like a publication. You have to have a statement of ownership, and you have to show like based on the issue that we're examining, how many copies sold and so on, and then it gives you a comparison point for previous years. So I know we've talked about this about 3 times on the show, but I've lost some of those years. But in terms of the physical copies of the magazine, the issue that they were looking at, 9,184 copies. So you think like PWI, like it seemed like it was like a obsolete thing, right? There's newsletters and then there's websites, but now like almost every performer talks about their ranking, right? Like PWI probably smartly gives them the heads up, like however many days before with a picture and whatever, so they could promote it. But you think the magazine would be doing better. But 2 years ago was 13,000 copies. So that's a 25% drop in physical copies sold. We don't know how many digital copies they're selling. What is it, McIlvaney? Kevin McIlvaney seems like he's doing a great job. It's an engaging magazine, but at least in terms of the print, people aren't going for it. So I hope it continues, not to cause alarm, but we're just looking at the numbers here. But I think a lot of people get the digital copies now. Like almost every issue is like a hotshot issue, right? Like there's not many now where they're not like 500 women's, it's been growing, which is a good idea. I think women's 250 or 300, top tag teams, awards issue. There's not like too many where it's just like, here's a regular issue. Now, the other thing not only affects PW Insider, but the field as well. A lot of websites, I'm not sure if you're seeing this, John, like not in pro wrestling, like where you'll go there and they'll be like, it looks like you're using ad blocker. Unless you disable ad blocking, like you can't access the content. So it seems like, they're not getting as much advertising dollars as they'd like to. So I don't know if it's, to make more money or just to be able to keep things going. This is something that's restricted. So PW Insider, they've always been annoying with the ads and sort of like some of the paid ads as well in the content advertorials, but they do break some important information sometimes. So I do look at it, on my phone, because on my desktop, I don't want to disable any ads.
Yeah, interesting there. So as far as West Side Gun is concerned, what in the world is he doing in pro wrestling, or what's his association with wrestling? What's going on with him and Zilla Fatu?
Yeah, I think last time we said like, who is this West Side Gun? I'm not sure I even know much better. I understand now though
Right.
that he's a rapper out of Buffalo. He loves pro wrestling. He's made a lot of money with rap music. He's a designer. And he had this show that I don't know if the tickets were sold separately or, it was all wrapped into one, but his Fourth Row brand had a wrestling show, and Zila Fatu was the champion, so was crowned the champion. So that's really smart move there. But just pulling an article. Unfortunately, I didn't save which publication, but everyone can look it up. The title is Hip Hop Wrestling Collide at Westside Gunn's Heels Have Eyes at the UIC Forum. Hip hop's music influence on pro wrestling goes back decades. Okay, let me skip that. Buffalo, New York rapper Gunn, who grew up as an avid fan and front row fixture at many wrestling promotions, appears to have the gravitas and, most importantly, the financial backing to pull off Fourth Rope, a wrestling promotion that's aligned with his concert series, Heels Have Eyes, along with his new album, Still Praying. The event, which took place last weekend, featured musical performances, DJ Premier, Pete Rock, and so on, in ring, and they brought in a lot of TNA wrestlers: Moose, Henry, Slamovich, Francis, Santana, Grace, along with Zila Fatu and Cha-Cha Charlie. It's not a shock that Gunn, who might be pro wrestling's most influential evangelist alongside Wale, would parlay his fandom into creating something more tangible along with his music. Some of his songs include Gorilla Monsoon and the Dudley Boys. Phil Lindsay, a wrestling okay, so this just felt like a logical next step for him in a lot of ways, because he was showing up at all the wrestling shows and he's showing that he was a hardcore fan. He talked a lot about wanting to be acknowledged by some of these companies like WWE. It just felt like for him, he wanted to be hands-on, wrestling more, and it just felt like it was only a matter of time. Gunn successfully amalgamated his interests under one roof: his music, his merchandise. Also, the wrestling personalities were hyper aware of the moment's history. Fourth Rope MVP seemed like he was making the call from inside the house. Recently, there's been a lot of talk regarding how the WWE doesn't create storylines for black male talent. Wrestling scribes have pointed out the abs. Okay, so they go off onto that issue in terms of black male performers in pro wrestling. Let's see, though. TNA wrestler Francis was on last Saturday's card. The marketing genius of West is not just it's a sold-out show, it's a sold-out wrestling show named after the album he just dropped, which also talking about the show, and so on and so on. So the music connection to pro wrestling continues. It always seems like it'll be like a way to like jumpstart, and promotions with those monies do seem to get ahead, but it never like has gone to like a super high level, right? We've seen NWA, which we'll talk about. They're doing their thing. Obviously, our friend of the Violent J of the Insane Clown Posse, they have their thing going. Wale Mania, and I'm sure others. So it's like, it's more of a, I would say like more of like a curiosity and a secondary thing to performers, rather than like it being a launching pad for like a really big promotion just historically.
So as far as GC Dub is concerned, what's going on with them? I know they're going to Hawaii of all places.
Yeah, so they were just in Hawaii, and I don't know if they like moved the room in the convention center. That was the original space. It was a small room that, you know, in the photos I seen looked full, but I think it was just from watching the events bright or the event space that it was just a few rows deep, and that's a long, as Barry Horowitz might say, a long schlep to Hawaii for selling just a few rows of tickets. I know that they were in San Diego just a couple days before, and a lot of the talent were enjoying that opportunity to hit Hawaiian beaches. And Brett Lauderdale wants to get to all 50 states and all of that, but it just seems like an expensive proposition. So looking forward to learning more about that in the future. In my opinion, GCW's stellar success of the last few months is this American Dream small show that's upcoming. Every time they put more tickets on sale, it seems to sell out. They put some more third tier of the mall, I guess GA, but it'll be blocked off, so it's not that you could just stand there, but that you'll have a blocked off section that should be unobstructed. Those seem to have sold out as well. So really curious about the numbers there. John, are you considering going to that one?
Yes, for sure. I'm thinking about it. Just depends on what the wife and kids are up to, but I definitely want to.
Well, it depends how you position it. You could be like, "Do you want to spend the day in the mall?"
Yeah,
And
true.
who would decline that? You just be like, "I just have to step away for these 3 hours, or maybe let's watch the show, and then we can." I know that there's like carts where you could drive around the mall. I've heard a lot of good things. My family has gone, but
Yeah.
I haven't yet gone.
Oh, it's huge. It's gigantic.
Um, And they just announced the show, I believe, with Progress in the Electric Ballroom in London. So that's another feather in their cap. And I don't know, how the whole process works in terms of like working visas as like entertainment, or sports when you're passing through these countries. But it seems like a lot of work, a lot of coordination to get there. But certainly the GCW crew isn't afraid of whatever it takes to get out there. So I think we've been deep diving into GCW and so on upcoming shows for a while. So we'll take a little break from that this week and come and focus on some other things.
Why don't we focus on perhaps our favorite guest, perhaps Disco Inferno's favorite person of all time, Mr. Kevin Kleinrock, Mr. Masked Republic. What's going on, Kevin?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Good. I'm just trying to get that same number of appearances as Brett. Like, that's all. That's my goal here, right? I gotta. He's still beating me.
Now it depends how we parse this out. A number of our guests, as you know, Kevin, have roots in upstate New York. Now you're on the West Coast,
Yep.
which complicates our math, but but you're certainly, I think you're far and away the leader on the West Coast board, and you're moving up quickly in the all-time leaderboard.
Okay, we'll accept that for now.
And
keep in mind, Lavie books the guest. Keep that in mind. So it's up to him, Kev.
And we appreciate you didn't celebrate the Dodgers winning the World Series that much, or that I noticed on Facebook. That was very kind of you.
No, I mean, I grew up in LA, a Dodgers fan, and would go to Dodgers games, but my lack of following traditional sports it keeps me from being too attached to any one team's wins or losses.
Fair enough.
So what's going on, and what's the latest with Masked Republic?
Oh, Lord, where do we begin? Well, we finally announced, and we had announced the middle grade book series a while ago, but just shortly ago, we finally revealed the cover for our middle grade book series with the Munoz dynasty, Dragon Lee, Rush, and Jalistica, along with their father, El Toro Blanco, now known as Bestia del Ring. So that is something that I am extremely excited about, being able to get this middle grade adventure novel in English and Spanish out to people in March. March 10th is our official release date for that. And just one more avenue that Masked Republic is taking to expand Lucha Libre beyond the borders of Mexico in every way possible. So that's been really exciting. And then, we continue developing a plethora of entertainment from preschool to adult. We have I think since last we talked, because this was just last month, our second comic book from Masked Republic Comics, Vampiro Rockabilly Apocalypse, launched, and the response to that one has been phenomenal. Other than the fact that his driver is kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, getaway driver, even though he's not necessarily getting away from anything bad, he's just trying to outrun the apocalypse. She is a luchadora from a luchador family, but Vampiro is not a luchador really in this series. He is a rock and roll icon, and he just happens to be in the middle of the apocalypse impending across our world and trying to stop it from happening. So we're excited about that one and the feedback we've received there. And our Luchaverse relaunched, and the Luchaverse Catalyst 1 through 3 are in comic shops now, along with Vampiro #1. And I think since last we talked, we did our first event with our partners at UTA for Masked Mania, and we went to Burt Ogden Arena in Texas. It was our first Masked Republic Arena show, and let me tell you, we would love never to run somewhere that's not an arena again, because producing a show in an arena when the arena is your partner and they're taking care of the staging and the lights and the video screens and all that, and you just show up and put on the best show you can. It's a nice way to do business. So we are not too spoiled to know that we won't be able to do that all the time, but we are looking at hopefully a large number of shows with UTA for the Masked Mania brand for 2025, and we'll hopefully have announcements before the end of the year of where we're going next.
Man, with Vampiro, it's interesting because he says he's going to retire, and then he's like more popular than ever right now. I mean, he's kind of like blowing up. It's one of those things where maybe he shouldn't retire. All this stuff's going on.
Well, to be clear and fair, he is doing his Mexico farewell tour, and I don't expect to see him wrestling in Mexico again after the end of this year. But well, okay, of course, one is it's wrestling, so will there be a comeback show or tour in another 5 years? Who knows? But he is committed to this last round of shows with AAA is his goodbye in every city, and it's drawn extremely well and sold out pretty much everywhere it's been. And after that, he's going to be spending more time in the United States. He's just got back right before New York Comic Con from Italy, where he's working again on a regular basis over there now. But he's really dedicated to his projects outside of pro wrestling. He has a podcast in Mexico. Obviously, it's listened to globally, but they're doing 2 million views on social media, an episode for clips from their show. It's just completely blowing up. When he's doing his appearances at conventions and like San Diego Comic Con, New York Comic Con, people are coming up and talking about the podcast, and he didn't necessarily expect that people outside of Mexico, it's in Spanish, were listening to it, but it's really caught on. It's a podcast about non-wrestling stuff. He interviews musicians and actors and actresses and politicians and all sorts of pop culture people. But yeah, he's got a number of other projects that are lined up. And we're obviously hoping that the comic book series is going to lead in other directions as well. So he will be busy after his Mexico in-ring retirement. That is for sure. And the NWA, he's working for the NWA here and making appearances, and that won't be stopping. I don't know that he'll be wrestling per se so much, but he's enjoying his time with and looking forward to continuing with the NWA.
And I know your boy Latin Lover's killing it too in the podcast game, right? Is he killing it?
Yeah, he's got a super popular podcast over there as well. It really it seems like the wrestler, and I think you have to have the right personalities, right? Latin Lover's a big personality who really is more popular in Mexico because of his telenovela and other non-wrestling appearances over the last few decades than he is for wrestling at this point. But he's back in AAA as well on camera as a authority figure of sorts. But yeah, there seems to be a really good formula for the right personality, but not talking about wrestling, talking about other stuff. No, right. With Latin Lover, he does have a lot of luchadors come on the show, and those interviews seem to get buzzworthy, and there's somebody's always saying something that's getting picked up by the press and becoming a story in one way or another. So it's I think he's doing well with that.
I know Konnan was on and it did huge numbers too, and obviously they've have passed together, maybe a little bit of heat there, but yeah. Well, listen, I think it's wrestling, so it's really hard to find two people who have been top of the card that haven't had heat with each other at some point, in their career. But yeah, no, they I know that Konnan show did huge numbers. As far as Walmart is concerned, I know they carry Masked Republic, right? I mean, how the heck did that happen? That's awesome.
So, most of our products that we do these days are licensing deals. When we started out, we were working with our friends who had, silk screen presses and making shirts and selling them off of our website. But we knew about, I don't know, maybe about 7 years ago now, we knew that if we wanted to really up our merchandising and licensing game, we were going to have to get into actual licensing of our brands and our talent. And we started working with a number of agents that would help us accomplish those goals. And that's how we ended up with, action figures and a cookbook and a lot of the other fun stuff and cool products that we've done over the years. But this opportunity came up because we have a relationship with a company called Mad Engine that does licensing for everyone from Disney on down, including WWE. And they had an opportunity to pitch to Walmart, and they liked the shirt, and which it's always pretty cool to us when our company logo is chosen, to be the item or the shirt for anything, and we found that at our live events too that our logo tends to sell pretty well, even up against some of the big name luchadors that we might have merch for. But Mad Engine was able to get Walmart to take in the Mass Public logo shirt. It's available across the country in stores that Walmart has given their Hispanic kind of store label to, which is hundreds of stores. And so right now you can find our logo shirt there for $8.98. And so if you have a Walmart in your area, I would appreciate it if you checked it out and let us know on social media if they carry them in your area. But also, not a bad deal. We've never sold our logo shirt for $8.98. So hopefully it does well over the next few months. And I think it definitely could open the door for apparel from the luchadors that we represent and other Lucha Libre associated products, hopefully in Walmart.
Lavie, I know you got some good questions for Kevin.
That's Kevin. Just something that came randomly into my mind. We'll start out with something fun. You don't have to name names in terms of the requester, but what was like the most random request you ever got to use Lucha talent, and why did you have to turn it down?
Well, the most random request we didn't turn down. The most random request was an email that I got. This is going a number of years back. I got an email that I absolutely thought was a scam, or it just wasn't real. It was like, hey, we're doing this event for charity. It's with this company called Charity Vision, and we provide eyeglasses and other sight related services to countries that can't provide it, and we're doing a boxing match between Mario Lopez and Oscar De La Hoya, and we want you guys to come and do a lucha match. Oh yeah, also Mitt Romney will be there, and maybe you can do something with him. And I almost didn't return that email because it seemed pretty far-fetched, but wouldn't you know, it was legit. And we did that event, and it was I'm pretty sure it was Serpentico and Oraculo who did that show. That was probably the weirdest, most random thing. In terms of licensing, not so much things we've had to turn down, but there's been a fair amount of products that we did agree that we wanted to do, but then for some reason fell through. From dog clothes to our own tequila, which we'll get back to one day. Absolutely. But trying to think of anything that maybe early on, some cannabis related products. So we always, offer up Konnan for anything, that comes along, cannabis related.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything we've like rejected designs for t-shirts or, different ideas that people have had within, but I can't think of a product so far that we've just flat out rejected. But if I think of one, I'll let you know.
Cool. I appreciate the Mitt Romney story. I actually remember that situation, and I never linked it back to you. So small world. I love it. And forgive me for the pronunciations. I'm doing my best. How is El Hijo del Vikingo doing?
Vikingo. That was pretty good. Hijo del Vikingo. He's doing all right. It seems like the injury was to the knee, or to the leg that he had surgery on. So that was the real scary part, was, did he just do damage where he just had been healing from? And it seems like it was more of a sprain. just because of how he landed. And I would assume everything goes according to plan. He'll be back in action, in about a month or so. I'm sure that he's going to make sure that he's ready to come back, or I should say maybe others will make sure that he's ready to come back, because I think we've seen that he is not one to hold back and not one to. It's the Bryan Danielson type of situation, right? When he goes in the ring, he doesn't have a half speed. He can't give half of who he is. He's got to go full speed, and so I think that sometimes he has to rely on the others around him to make sure that he's not pushing it too far too fast. But I do expect that hopefully by the end of the year he'll be back in action.
So, not saying you have insider information, but you would probably be better at giving a go at helping us solve it. What is going on with JBL and AAA?
So, well, first off, JBL is showing up everywhere, right? I mean, like JBL, it's not that they're all connected, right? I mean, yes, AAA does business with TNA, and yes, sorry, I looked like I cut out there for a second. He's showing up everywhere. He's in GCW, he's in here, he's in there. So what's going on with JBL and what is he thinking about his career at this stage, I think is a really interesting story right now. Because, part of it has got to be fun, because the man has done very well for himself financially, not just from what he made in wrestling, but I know he's been very wise with investments. And so I can't imagine that he's doing this like, some other people that might be doing this because they need to pick up, a payday. So I think he must be having fun, and he must be enjoying showing up and wrecking havoc and leaving. But honestly, I think that and again, I don't have any insider information. I'm looking at this from a fan perspective and from just following the business perspective. I do believe that what AAA is putting out on television is really part of the real story. I think that they have always had an eye for the United States, and they've throughout time tried to approach coming into the US from different angles and different ways of doing it. And I think that this seems to be a creative story that will potentially bring them back into the US and give a little bit of a reason for why they're coming to the US, other than to bring Lucha Libre. But it is that now JBL is an investor, and he and his partners can be the ones that bring them to the United States. So we'll see if 2025 brings some arena shows for AAA in the US. They did, but it's been a while since they've had a proper AAA show here in the US, and so I think I'm guessing that legitimately is part of what's going on.
So, given your relationship with them, like, have you gotten a call like, hey, Kevin, I know I seen this stuff at the UTA. I know you have big plans. We're good together, but can you chill? Because we kind of want to do our own thing. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, so Master Republic sits in a really interesting spot, because we are not we're not a promotion, right? We do shows, but our be all end all of who we are is not being a promotion. And we have kind of become the go-to for helping companies in Mexico when they need to navigate the US, whether it's work visas, whether it's consulting on shows, or whatever the case may be. I think that really for us, because we always get the question. We get the question when we're pitching stuff or trying to set up a show or whatever, but it's not AAA, but it's not CMLL. So what is it? And why should we be working with you when there's these two big companies out there? And I think for us, that's why we have to come up with ways to differentiate our product and what we do. Masked Mania is meant to be, if you've never been to Lucha Libre at Arena Mexico, what is it and how do I experience that? And that goes beyond the matches that we put on in the ring. It's the experience of showing up in the arena and being able to meet the talent right there up close and personal. It's the food that served. It's what's going on in the parking lot before the show. So we are really building Masked Mania to be a Mexico-like experiential event that goes beyond what's happening in the ring. And I think that leaves a great place in the market for AAA to come and for AAA to do shows, because you're going to get on a AAA show what it is you see on AAA television. And this, I mean, listen, this country has a lot of venues, and I think that AAA coming here and running, even if they ran every weekend, that's only 4 markets a month, or 8 if they're doing double shots, they're going to be able to hit. So I don't think we're really worried about that. I don't think they're really worried about that. Even if we, both companies, were on full-time national touring, it's still such a big place with so many places to go. And I think that the product that we're bringing right now in ring is what I like to call a sampler platter of Lucha Libre. If you go to one of the Masked Mania shows, you're getting a trios match, you're getting a tag team match, you're getting minis, you're getting everything that really, is Lucha Libre. And so I think that it often can even be complementary towards each other. Whereas if we're going to a market that maybe isn't as familiar with Lucha Libre, and we go into a market 6 months before AAA brings their show, or, I mean, CMLL is never coming here to do a show of their own, but, anybody else, I think really we can be opening eyes and creating fans to come to, their shows. And vice versa. If they hit a town first, we're bringing kind of a different approach to what a live lucha event is than they are. And so, no, absolutely not. I can tell you, nobody has called us and asked us to chill. And I do think that the big picture is we can work quite complementarily. That's not even a word, but you know what I'm saying? With other groups coming in and around, and really, have the same goal, which is to broaden lucha in total in the United States and everywhere outside of Mexico.
So Kevin, me, I like the details, so I'm going to push you as much as I can, and you know how to push back. So let's see what we can do here. So with this UTA agreement, right, you had this event, thousands of people were there, it looked great. So like, what's the next step in terms of like, is there like a certain region identified? Are these going to be mid-major arenas, which is a word that I wish Tony Khan knew a little bit better? No, what's the advertising going to be? Is there going to be some sort of television support? Are you drawing from your main talent as the base? I think that's enough color.
So it's funny because I'm gonna give you a word that I'm sure that you're familiar with at this point. So UTA is a flywheel that we sure are lucky to have tapped into. UTA, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and in the room were agents that represented live events, the Hispanic initiatives by UTA, gaming, and general touring, who represents kind of musicians and comedians. And there's a great opportunity here for us to really tap into people who specialize in live events and that think and are from outside of the wrestling space. And I think that it always requires a really delicate balance, because we've seen things happen where people from outside of wrestling just assume that, it's pro wrestling. How hard can it be? Let's especially in the lucha space, you've seen a lot of people who have promoted Hispanic concerts really well think that, well, if I can promote, Hispanic concerts, then lucha can't be that hard. And it doesn't work unless you have really the right mix of people and the right voices being allowed to be heard. And so that's one of the things that we're most excited about, is we have somebody who is a full-time tour manager, agent who's now going out and talking with arenas all over the country about bringing Mass Mania into those arenas. And we have another agent there who's part of this core Mass Mania group who is there to think about the brand overall and licensing opportunities. There is somebody from the TV side, but I think that for 2025, the real focus is on the event. And, we've done one. It went great. The show aspect of it was fantastic. If you've seen, I think you mentioned seeing, you've seen some of the footage, you've seen some of the clips, like it could not have gone better, from start of the show to end of the show. And then we got our heads back together and we talked about, what are the other elements that we'd like to see and do. We had a whole plan of what we wanted to do outside the arena, but because of the weather, we weren't able to do anything outside of the arena. So we had to kind of change those plans at the last minute. But so I would say 2025, the experience, the focus is the live event experience and creating this event that people who like lucha, who maybe have never been to lucha, people who just want to go to a fun, different kind of cultural event, people who might have watched WCW lucha, but don't follow WWE or AEW today, but they're think it's cool to go see Juventud Guerrera and a Vampiro or whoever. I think there's a lot of audiences for us to draw from. So that's the focus for 2025. Will there be a television element to it? Maybe at some point. And I think what that approach would be and how that would be is very, very up in the air. I would say that we're not the arena experience. This sampler platter works great because you can take that and you can move that from town to town to town. And yes, you are taking that traditional wrestling approach of let's leave them with a bit of a story so that if we come back around to this town, we can get in there and kind of do this rematch or do this stipulation match or whatever. But the focus is not week to week to week storytelling, and it makes it a lot easier for anyone to just jump in and watch this event. So that's the focus for 2025. But this is a long-term partnership, joint venture that we're not. What I love about working with UTA is nobody is rushing and everybody wants to take a step, analyze, tweak it, what's next, and to have partners who are willing to do that and to look long term and build something over the next few years. I think that's going to be a great benefit to all of us in the end. But very excited about getting back out in 2025 and hitting arena. To your question, we did have a call about markets and regions, and that's what Joe, the touring agent at UTA, is focused on. And I think we've got both places you'd expect, major Hispanic population centers on that roadmap, but we've also got some other cities and towns where I don't know that they've ever had a full straight from Mexico Lucha Libre show. But I think it's going to be really, really fun to try to bring this experience there. And, we'll let you know as soon as we've got more word there. I would say that we're probably looking at the second half of 2025, just because, the arenas and the venues that we're trying to book, this is a 6 to 12 months in advance, booking strategy, and not a, call them up a couple weeks before and say, hey, we want to bring a show to town. Plus, to your point, we need to market and advertise these well. And that's always part of the conversation is how do we do that? And what's the timing of that?
No, I think it's interesting that, obviously lucha in Mexico has a very broad cultural appeal, but I think just for an entertainment purposes, I think it could travel so much more than traditional pro wrestling. I'm taking my son to his first WWE show, the holiday show, of course. and he asked me about two people. He doesn't care about pro wrestling. He asked me about two people: Bianca Belair, because she was in a video game as a downloadable character, and Jake Paul, just because he watches YouTube. But I think he'll have a good experience, especially as John and I were talking about at $100 a ticket, but in the top tier. But I think like if he went to like a big production lucha show, that like he would probably be like even more engaged to it. So there's a lot of like possibilities there.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So Kevin, I wanted to get your sense. Like my theory for a few years is that the super indie, I'm not going to say dead, I don't want to be dramatic, but like isn't what it used to be. Meaning that like there's not a lot of Northeast wrestlings anymore, even though there still is Northeast wrestling, where they're like, okay, we're going to hit a market that is semi-major, or that can draw a couple thousand people. If we bring together some names that people know from TV, just off TV, we can make a lot of money, and everyone will be happy. I don't think that exists anymore. I think like GCW is that in some ways, but that's still like very niche, and it's hard to gather that. Are you seeing that like in terms of talent bookings? Is there like is there that still demand for like bringing in a number of talents to like these shows that aren't one of the known brands, or have you seen that dissipate a bit?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that there's so much more indie wrestling overall than there has ever been still. I mean, maybe post-pandemic, which has been a little bit of a dip, but I still think that there are more shows happening, in a given month than there were, maybe back when you could book a couple or 4 or 5 names and draw a few thousand people maybe to some of these bigger Northeast type of shows. I think some of it is really market dependent, meaning I think there's a lot of markets where you can't just grab a handful of guys that just left WWE and take them to that town and think it's gonna draw. But I do think that there are some markets where that you can still do that, and we see that. But I would say that from my casual observation, it's definitely less than it was. I don't know if that goes to just there's so many entertainment choices, and like you said, like there's a whole generation that's coming up now that doesn't really have an affinity for pro wrestling. And I think a lot of those kind of shows as you're describing, those are families that were going out to those shows and buying 4 tickets, buying 5 tickets. And if you have your Gen Alpha or Gen Z that are not fans, and now we're kind of getting into a second generation of people, I think it's gonna be harder for those family friendly big shows to really draw, because the kids aren't like, when I grew up, I was begging to go to wrestling, and I just don't. I think it's a bigger picture question, because I still think our industry as a whole is doing a horrible job of creating new fans out of kids. I think that we are at risk of that median age continuing to go past 60, and as an industry as a whole, I wish that there was more being done to create young fans, and then maybe you would have those middle of America shows that could draw thousands again when people leave WWE. I don't know, but I because we don't do we hate booking out talent. Like that's not what we like to do. We don't like we'd rather just have people call the talent direct for the most part. I mean, like for AAA, we book Vikingo, and there are a couple other people that we will do that for. But because we aren't set up as a business to really be booking talent out like that, I don't know that I've necessarily seen the exact kind of rise and fall as you've been observing. But I do think that overall, I think we're seeing a slowdown of shows like that. And I do wonder if a good part of that is that it's not the family thing to do right now.
So before I was obsessive about pro wrestling stats, I was obsessive about comic book stats. And one of my favorite things in the Diamond, previews was that they would have like, here's the top 100 or even top, actually at a certain point it was like top 300 best-selling, and they would actually give you like some stats. So Kevin, if it's not appropriate to share the actual sales number, I want to see if like I could get some comparables just to get a sense of like how the Master of the Public comics have been selling, and if they're going into second printings or more, and if there's some plans for like trade paperbacks.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I can't give necessarily like actual numbers. We're still, even though we are with a great publisher called Massive Publishing, when you look at those charts, it's still Marvel, DC, Image, and those are, I mean, really those are the big ones. And honestly, depending on what chart you look at, if you're adding manga to that, they're all kind of getting slaughtered by manga these days. So I would say that we're very happy with the numbers. For us, getting these comics into stores, and Michael Kingston talks about this all the time, both in terms of actually being able to get the comics and the stories. It's all about accessibility. We want people to be able to have and get. We also want the stories to be very easy to jump into and to follow along and to become a fan of without having to know anything else before you pick up the comics. And so definitely plan for trade paperbacks. That's just kind of the model that makes sense these days. So I don't have a timeline for you right now for the Luchaverse trade paperback. And Vampiro, we've still got 4 more issues to get out and start talking about the trade for that. So it'll be a while, but yes, the plan is for trades. We've got a multi-year plan mapped out here for Master of Public Comics, where things are kind of going to go and head, both on the page and what we're hoping to accomplish off the page as things develop for television, video games, etc. So we take a very transmedia approach to all IP, in terms of the old approach to building an IP was you had your core, whatever it was, your TV show, your movie, or your comic book, your book, and it became successful, and then you licensed it people to do with it what they would. This is our interpretation for TV, or this is our interpretation for a video game, or if it is TV or video game, our interpretation for something in published. Try to think about it holistically from the beginning and have thoughts from the get-go of what will this look like for TV, what will this look like for a video game, what would this look like in licensed products. And so this is kind of step one, the publishing side of it. But I'm really proud of the books that we're putting out. The reviews of Vampiro have just been incredible. And if you looked at like the average reviews the week that number 1 came out, it was higher than the average Marvel comic or the average DC or Image comic for that week. So while we have an eye towards television, video games, etc., we're certainly not sacrificing what's on the page in the book for that. These are incredibly well-written comics, incredible art in the comics. And so we're just going to keep pushing on that. And I do expect word of mouth to kind of grow, especially for Vampiro. It's for people that like quirky horror, in the lines of like Evil Dead or things of that nature. It's not nearly as campy as Evil Dead, but Michael Kingston writes a great Vampiro with lots of great quips and one-liners, and really captured the real Vampiro's personality very well in it. And so, yeah, we're satisfied with where the numbers are right now. We are expecting and hoping things to grow, and I think that I don't know that for Catalyst, the Luchaverse 3 that we did, that we do a second printing of those. We'll roll that into a trade, and the trade will be kind of the way to get it. With Vampiro, it's still kind of too early to tell. We are starting to run low, at least on our end, with stock on number 1. But I think this also ties back into like Masked Mania. My hope and goal is that as we are touring the show, our merchandise stand is going to be unlike any other merchandise stand at a wrestling show, because of the variety of products that we offer. So you'll be able to come to the show and pick up a Vampiro comic book and hopefully, get it autographed by him in person. You'll be able to, pick up our tabletop game that we have coming out, which is the first of its kind. I don't think I have it here right now. I was looking to see if I had the box here, but oh wait, I do. I can get that. I know this isn't going to be as much fun for people listening, but we've got our first our tabletop game. This is Cine Lucha, the board game. I can't move it the right way, and it's a card and dice game, and it's going to be, it's great fun for both a family to play. You can play it, 2 people can play it together, working cooperatively to beat the enemies. But you can also play it one-on, not one-on-one. You can play it solo by yourself. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But what we're planning on doing too with that is, when you come to a Masked Mania event, you'll be able to sit down and play the game, in the hour and a half before the show. And I think there's going to be some really unique ways. It's our live event experience, and also our live event merch stand.
Awesome, Kevin. This is great. As we planned for, you certainly have a lot of talking points. It's all good stuff. We're cheering and celebrating as well. Let me turn over to John.
Kev, where can everybody find you and Masked Republic?
We try to keep it very simple. Masked Republic, MASKED Republic, on Twitter or X, Facebook, and Instagram. We also do have a Masked Republic comics accounts. So if you are into comics, definitely check those out and follow that as well. And then Masked Mania, if you want to know when we might be coming to a town near you in 2025, at Masked Mania Live across social media. So, and then of course, maskedmania.com and maskedpublic.com. So that's where you can find us.
All right. Awesome, Kevin. Thank you for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Awesome to get him back on. Let's hit the plugs, Lavie. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. What about you?
On Amazon, Trump Mania, Vince McMahon, WWE, in the making of America's 45th and what's the number now? 47th president. Both the original, there was a 2020 election special. There'd have to be a good amount of demand to do more. But on X, follow me at Lavie Marg, LAVIE MARG, and we reached 100 members of the business on LinkedIn. So we did it, John. We did it. So we'll keep growing. Hopefully 100 is an accelerant number that people feel, okay, there's people here. Let's keep going. And that's been a fun thing to build up in a unique platform.
All right, Lavie. Thank you. Thank you to Kevin Kleinrock. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next time for the business of the business. See you then, folks.